before, I believe, any of the selectmen on a regular basis.
Correct.
We've been apprised by representatives from the town as to
Right.
what's going on. Is it your position that it's kind of a floating committee, so that I'm here as a selectman of Stowe, and then a vote for Stowe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that.
The work is the most important thing. All right, we're waiting for those to print off. So, my suggestion is while we're getting those, why don't we jump to the firming the calendar date? Does everybody have their calendar? It should come out to be the 18th. Hi, Maureen. At 7 p.m. Is everybody still good with that date?
Yeah, that's what day of the week?
It's a Thursday. We still good with Thursdays? Still good?
Yeah.
Good. All right. All right. So, I'm just trying to find the agenda here. What we'd like to do tonight, I think, is finish up this draft document to a document that we can forward to the public and begin to discuss our next steps. I've talked to them about them in the agenda in terms of recommendations, but they're really next steps for this group. And so, while we're waiting for the printed copy and a review of the page by page, do you want to start talking about next steps and how to move forward? I think I put on there sort of marketing.
Something that we drafted as topics for discussion back in February.
But
Lots more in depth, all the information's not
so, next steps. How to move forward, Bob?
Well, I'm sorry to have to say this, but I think we should scrap this draft and start a new data collection effort that's specific to the opportunities and problems of the high school.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion for this committee to do just that, to discard this draft and start it again with a new data collection effort, focusing on the unique problems and opportunities of the Neshoba Regional High School.
Well, for purposes of discussion, I would second the motion.
You want a discussion on the motion? Can you talk a little bit about what your what the issues are?
I think this is, the overview is all focused on square footage, and it seems to make some reference to standards for accreditation are focused on square footage. To me, this document reflects the desire of the administration and the employees of Neshoba Regional High School. I don't think it reflects the concerns and interests of the non-employees of the school district. We met with you in September with a list of questions we felt need to be answered. None of that is addressed in here. And let me hand that out so people know what I'm talking about. So what we have is, we met with Superintendent Wood on the 14th of September. There were representatives, myself, Lorraine, Heather and David LeBlanc, and Mark Jones, so all three towns were represented. And we asked that these questions be addressed. Again, I don't see them being addressed in this draft, and consequently, I think the draft is inadequate, should be discarded. and we should start over again.
Other thoughts and opinions? Tom?
Ross Perry from Stowe, Capital Planning, has been a fairly regular attendee at this and has been kept apprised of it. He was unable to attend tonight, but he asked, I have some comments that he asked to be read, and they seem to fit in here. So he is referring specifically to this draft, which he had reviewed. So there are numerous areas that don't, quote, meet MSBA requirements or guidelines, unquote. Not meeting the guideline doesn't justify a multi-million-dollar project. Instead of proposing a new facility, I, being Ross, suggest the school administration propose a 5-year renovation project. For example, poor Wi-Fi coverage can be fixed. Difficult to hear PA announcement in the class cafeteria can be fixed. If limited classroom can't be fixed with reconfiguration of the existing space, propose portable classrooms. What are enrollment projections? Before the administration files a statement of interest with MSBA, they should verify that the 3 towns share this interest. And that's my comment, particularly goes to his last comment. We in Stowe are still struggling along under accepting new debt for center school. We've got, in all probability, a special town meeting in February or March, which is going to propose a good use for the former Pompo school. All issues need to be addressed, fire station, community center, various things that would use that space, but you can't put a number on it right now, but 8 million, 10 million, something like that, facing us. We have seen any number of people in town, long, very adequately, very involved citizens of the town, taxed out of town. Without mentioning any names, there's a lady and her husband that were both very active working in town. They would have loved to live out their days here. They're now living in an over 55 condo in Hudson because they couldn't afford the taxes here anymore. My taxes are 7 times what they were on my house when I bought it. Granted, a number of years ago, but the value of the house is not 7 times what it was when I bought it either. Well below that. I'm retired. I always thought being retired on a fixed income was a canard until I was retired on a fixed income. I don't want to be one of the next ones forced out, but I'm trying not to address self-interest. But I think before we get the cart too far before the horse, it really makes sense to go back and gauge public opinion and support before we just go into this with effectively a fait accompli, that there is going to be a new high school, or depending on what MSP comes back with, massive renovations. If it costs approximately $30 million to add and reno center school, one of our schools, just one school in Stowe, what's it going to cost for a new high school? I think the time is premature, and I would like to underscore the motion with a quote from your letter dated November 14th. How about that? Almost a year ago. This was when this committee was first proposed. And it says the school committee recognized time to understand what these needs are, get more input from our local communities. And the mission of this space study task force is to study the current space use, projected program, and associated space needs, and, emphasis added, provide multiple recommendations to address both over the next 10 years. It's been about 12 months, and now we're seeing the words SOI floated out here. And I don't see a lot of alternate recommendations in these. One of the things that shot down 3 of our major capital projects in Stowe was because they were not prioritized. We hadn't looked at alternatives. All 3 of those major projects were rejected. Now there's a good chance about 2 years later, after a lot of in-depth look at alternatives, that one of those will fly in substantially achievable form. I don't see that here with this document. And I think it's time, my grandmother used to say, it's time to make haste slowly. I would support this motion and hope that we can kind of back up and make more sense as we go forward. Thank you.
Others? Sir?
My comment about the draft is it's an administration draft, and I think numerous concerns that I have, as well as I think the towns have not even reached the point of discussion. And I think that it's desirable to talk about some of those, mainly because they're probable reasons why bonds will get rejected. So finance is one of them. Obligations of the school committee, which are related, but not about buildings. For example, the OPEB, its liability is growing by $3 million a year without a bond, and there's no plan to deal with that, and yet there's a desire to spend more money for facilities without looking at the larger context of finances. I've yet to see a one-page management document which outlines the capacity of the various classes and classrooms, and so I can only judge that either the administration doesn't manage or is not managing that number, or hasn't
not managing what?
There's, to the best of my ability, I've not seen forthcoming a document which demonstrates what is the headroom in each class and each classroom over the course of a scheduled day. I have a 50-page schedule, but not a sort of management document which tells me in a statistical way what's the capacity that's left over in each classroom right now, and how does it relate to the capacity in each physical classroom as originally built. And I think that's one of the key questions about what is the headroom and what is the capacity for the school to grow or not grow in its current structure, and what are some of the next steps that we could do to handle that.
Others?
I think the issue is the process. I think really that's the issue, and I think I understand what Bob is saying, because there were a lot of requests made for specific types of information early on that we haven't seen, and I think there was an attempt to address some of that, but not even half of the body of the work that we had asked for. So I think that maybe it makes sense to re-examine the process and come up with a process that makes sense, because if you look at the proposed methodology that was outlined at the beginning, we really haven't followed that. And that was what we all signed up for. So that's where my suggestion is that we need to re-examine the process.
Well, it's always good to go back to the roots. I would argue, though, that these questions are answered in this document. Maybe not as called out, and we can talk about where that is and if they need to be called out. It's a good, I think, a good body of work. I would also say, just maybe not as much of a process, but it may have a slant of being an administration document, because we need everybody's input, and maybe we need to just write it together so that we get more of that input and make it more of a less of a flavor of the administration. I mean, we're not at a stage of recommendations that are in this document yet, because we haven't made those recommendations. An SOI, and I just really want to be clear about this, the only reason an SOI, and maybe premature even an SOI, is simply because that's the state's schedule for SOI. If we don't do it now, we can do it next year. I mean,
Then why do we have to go forward with an SOI now?
we don't. That's okay.
Because I don't think we're ready for that.
And maybe we're not. I'm just saying, it's all about, it's about timelines and about what this group wants to do.
But you're hearing from several people in this room that we feel these questions have not been answered. So if they're in the report, they're buried, but the data has certainly not been discussed and examined and subject to any critical scrutiny.
So let's do that.
It should be before it's embedded in here.
Okay, let's do that. I think that's a more reasonable thing to do than scuttle this document. I'm not I want to have the information that you're suggesting, and I want to be able to show that it's there. But I don't want to scuttle a lot of hours of manpower and thought and energy by lots of us, because you're not currently seeing that in there.
And there's a lot of data that we're asking for here. And again, it should be presented, subject to critical examination, follow-up. It's not appropriate, in my opinion, to turn around and say, there it is, it's in the report, your issue's taken care of. I really think we need to just scuttle the report.
I think at this point, it's fair to say, and I really hope that you can, don't attribute it to me, but make sure it's in there, that there is a need at the high school. There are significant needs at the high school. They need help. We have to do something to help them, but we do not know what that something is. And the reason that this list of questions came up, the reason that there were 5 of us who went to meet with Michael a few months ago was to say, we recognize there's a real need and we want to help, but we don't feel that we have the data that we need. But the effort, the process just kept going down the other path. So in order, every time we tried to make things, okay, let's put a stop on it, let's just look at it, it felt like things weren't being answered, which is why I second your motion.
This group first met last December, where, we're in our 11th month of operation, and if we don't understand what data is in this report, it's not a good report. If we don't understand, if we haven't had a chance to critically examine the data that we asked for, it's not something that we're going to be able to make up in one evening.
Unless we go through the report and see where that data is. I mean,
I would disagree with that.
Instead of just saying, let's start over, I would actually like to go through and see what we have and what we still need, because we're going to have to write something, and we can agree that we're not ready to move to the next, to any kind of a recommendation and everything. But we need to start someplace, and I don't see that just tossing this out the window is going to get us any closer, because you're complaining that it doesn't answer the questions, but I think it answers some, and some of the information is obscured a bit. But if we don't look at this and see what we have, and see where this needs to be shored up and which questions are still lacking, then we're gonna end up in 3 months in the same place. We're gonna have a document that doesn't say anything, and you're gonna sit here and say that we have all these questions that aren't answered. So I don't think that just scrapping the whole thing is going to get us anywhere any sooner.
I didn't hear you say scrap the whole thing. I
Yes,
heard
you
you.
did.
Scuttle.
Scuttle.
Oh, I thought, okay.
You discard it?
Scuttle to me means jettison this.
Right. Well, the whole document is built toward the conclusions at the end. Yeah,
I'm listening, I'm just trying to find.
okay.
Okay.
I'm not trying to get anything behind you.
No, I was just trying to find the methodology that I had on a piece of paper. I wanted to hang it back up again for everybody to see. Go ahead.
So the document is built to support the conclusions at the end. How can you say you should keep the report with the conclusions if the data's not, you don't know what the data is?
You don't need to keep the conclusion.
Right.
You don't need to keep okay, if we start over, where are we starting?
Well, if we start over, then everyone at this table needs to be at all the meetings and be heard. If we start over. And everyone at this table has not been heard. So that's the first step.
Yeah.
I would hate to see us push forward, whether it's with this document and a version of this document or something entirely different, and not have our ducks in a row to answer the questions that we need to answer when we get in front of folks in town, because they're gonna have questions. And I don't have answers to those questions right now. I don't have those answers. And I don't want to get in front of someone and have them look at it like, and then come back again when they've already said, geez, this isn't something that we wanted to do before, why would we want to do it now? Because then we're really shooting this whole effort in the foot. And again, there is a need, and we need to think through what and how we're going to proceed, rather than, let's just start editing this document right now. I don't think that's a reasonable effort.
You know, I think it might be appropriate in the future to cut and paste certain sections or paragraphs from the document. But as a whole, I don't think it's appropriate because we don't have the data we need to build an argument or to come to any conclusions.
Well, again, I would say we have a start at data. I'm hearing you that we still don't, you don't see the answers to your questions, and we need more data for the answers to those
It's not the
questions.
data points, it's the data points in context.
Right. I think there's a lot of context in this document. In fact, if I were to default and reflect it,
Data in my.
I was just going to say that. I would say there's more context than data. You know, that would be my reflection on the document, and I'd agree with that. Yeah. Which is why I think if these aren't as clear, because I think many of the data points in answers to these questions, if not all, are in here, we need to do a better job of culling them out so you can have.
And further, you know, I'll go on to say that on this list of questions, it's perfectly appropriate to come back and say, you know, that's not really the right question. Here's the question you really should be asking. Well, we haven't even had that discussion. So I really think we need to just start over. Say, okay, we've learned something in the past year, let's fix it going forward. Like Lorraine, I would, you know, if we went forward at this point, this would probably go to a town meeting, not in 2015, but in 2016. If we're not prepared, it gets shot down. Then it's at least 2 more years before you can bring it before a town meeting again. So you better be able to answer your questions the first time you bring it to town meeting. And we're nowhere near that yet. I wouldn't be able to answer questions to the selectmen, to our advisory committee, or to go up on town floor. I couldn't defend a next step. I couldn't defend to any of those people sending an interim document to the school committee that says anything other than we're still working on it.
I think one of the things that, from that little piece I quoted out of your letter, Michael, is, as a member of Board of Selectmen, what I thought I was, when I read this, it was a departure from what had been a lot of public criticism and past issues, the way they were raised coming out of left field, sports fields, and the science labs particularly. You know, there was a lot of criticism in town about we didn't know these were coming. We have 5-year capital plans that we planned down to a moderate-sized dump truck, and now you're coming with the multi-million-dollar things with no advance notice. So I think one of the things that I read into this was, this is a good start on a new process. Multi-year, I read, over the next 10 years, I thought this was going to be a long, investigative process in which there would be multiple forums in the communities to provide input, and multiple recommendations. That was one of the things that we did. When we had this task force, after our 3 capital projects were shot down, we put together a task force from the building committees of each of them, and they've been working, meeting sometimes twice a month for the last year, looking at recommendations, holding public forums. Selectmen had 4 public forums on the different possibilities, and we listened to people, and the task force listened to people before they focused in on, okay, we want a fire station and this combination at this location. That was just one of half a dozen recommendations, alternatives. This one, I granted, late to the party, I got a copy of this afternoon, and I turned to the back page, and there's a calendar about going to SOI March, starting the process to go to SOI on a proposal March 2015. That doesn't sound like what I thought I was going to get into with this page.
So, and again, some background, because we spent quite a bit of time on just trying to understand the MSBA process. Simply doing an SOI is like filling out a form. It really doesn't do anything but get us in a queue.
But part of that form says that the school committee commits to a project that it believes the 3 towns are going to favor in the coming 2 years. And I think you have a bunch of people here saying, we can't stand in front of town meeting and say that we favor the current discussion as it's occurred at this point. And so because we don't have the information that we feel that supports this particular point of view as described in this document, we can't collectively recommend that the school committee put their signature on that document because the towns, these people of the towns, not all the people in the towns, can't stand up in town meeting to support it. And therefore, in a sense, or at least from the opinion of some of these people here in this room, that we don't think the school committee will be successful in a 2-year enterprise. And therefore, it's not a great document for you guys to sign. Sure, it's a form, but it's also a commitment. And you've got a bunch of people here saying that commitment isn't really going to be fulfilled.
Again, this was a draft, and it was just to get us moving because we haven't met in a while. So, I mean, it's this committee. Let's talk. Let's figure out what, if there's more data to be collected, that's a next step.
I think perhaps the most useful thing to do is actually discuss what are the particular problems in the school and what are the particular opportunities for meeting them. And the recommendation you've got is basically let's throw it to this to the building authority and let them sort it out through the process that they go through. And we know that they're going to go through that no matter what we come up with as a potential thing. That they're set up to ignore whatever recommendation that the district comes forward. But I think we ought to have a clear idea before we go into that process, knowing what's likely to be desirable and why we think it's likely to be the case. And right now, I don't feel like the other members of this task force have that point of view. They really have a good exploration of what are the things that could be done. Could it make sense to have modular additions to the high school to have the office space that there's a crying need for? Could that relieve the classrooms in a way that hasn't really been discussed? Could it be that we get 5 or 10 modular classrooms for the next while, and that adds space in a way that fixes current needs while we're figuring out what's the larger process? Do we want to split the high school perhaps and have a sub-high school with a particular kind of program and a high school with another kind of program? Don't know. We haven't discussed it. So those kinds of things I think are valuable for all of us to sort out what's really possible and also what's tenable and untenable. And because that discussion hasn't occurred, I think that's why at least I, and I suspect others, feel like they can't support the recommendation you've got at the end of this document that we go forward with a statement of interest.
That was just a draft. I'm just...
Right, but this draft is asking for a recommendation.
Right.
And so
for us to build a recommendation, those are examples of recommendations.
Right.
So let's, as a committee, figure out what the recommendations are. I heard collection of more data to answer more questions. I heard scuttle the report. I mean, these are all recommendations, but we could put those in the report.
There's a motion before the committee, and I think we have to address the motion before we go on to other business.
Yep. If we're done discussing it. Other discussions? Perry? It's an important conversation.
I didn't hear what the specific motion was.
Oh, you came after.
I think I came right after the motion.
The motion is to discard this report and start over the data collection process to focus on the unique opportunities and problems of the Neshoba Regional High School.
I would certainly not be in favor of simply discarding the report and starting over, because there is a lot of There's a lot of information in here that's very factual, that I think is valuable in helping to move us forward towards either answering some of these questions or posing some additional questions. So I would not be in favor of simply discarding what we have, because I think there is a pretty significant amount of information here.
Well, I don't think that all of the information in here is inaccurate. I think the way it's been presented may not be comfortable. It's a lot of verbiage, but it's not really defining exactly where we need to go.
Yep.
And if we were going to take this and use it as a launch for another document, I'm going to go back to what I said originally, and I think we need to define what the process is, because I'm not comfortable with the current process. That's my biggest complaint, because we have asked for data, and you have given us some of that data, and you've done a great job of giving us what we've asked for when we've been able to have access to you. And I understand following certain protocol, but because the protocol kind of stymied us, we weren't able to get to some of the requests that we had. So I would be more comfortable saying, if this is truly a committee document, it should be written by the committee. But from where I sit, I was given this draft yesterday. I mean, I haven't seen anything in a while. So honestly, I had to go through it rather quickly because I'm working just like everyone else here. Now I have this document in front of me, and the only time I ever really got any input was at the very beginning of the process when the first draft came out. But since then, I'm not authoring this, I'm not co-authoring this, I'm not a tertiary author of this. So this doesn't feel like it's my document. So yeah, let's take the data that's appropriate, that we need, because there is some in here, and create a document that's built by the committee. And I'm not saying we write it, 10 people write it all together, but we need to define how we're going to move forward, because this is an administrative document. This is not a document that represents the task force.
Well, certainly to an initial observer looking at this, I mean, even if the motion were to carry, there's factual data in here about the history of the school, its enrollment, the dimensions of classrooms, the number of classrooms. Clearly, we're not suggesting, I don't believe even the author of the motion is suggesting that we never refer to those again because this was voted to be thrown out.
No.
I think
Certainly not.
the data in it, perhaps it might be an expiation of venting of something, and maybe I'm guilty of that as well. But I would like to see a lot of the options, even some that Mr. Berry referred to, some of the options, they may be unpalatable, they may be, you may have explored some of them, but to someone who's been there, he felt these were unanswered questions about alternatives going forward, a 5-year capital plan to fix some of the problems, and maybe stay within the 10-year time frame. Maybe we realistically talk about going to MSBA 8 years from now instead of in January, even on the initial stage. I think it's very premature at this stage. So even, I don't know as I even vote for this motion, now that I've already said I'd support it, but because the word throw it overboard.
Well, that's what I was reading.
It's a little, it was a little, you missed the grand gesture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very dramatic and made its point. But, obviously, there's a lot in there that would ultimately be incorporated, even if other options were adopted by this committee subsequently.
Others want to say something?
I also don't agree that we should just scrap the whole document. I do agree that some of the questions that Bob has written here may not be popping out at you in the document and maybe need to be clarified further, but I feel like we've put a lot of effort into this. And just to play devil's advocate, I remember you asking us as a group if any of us wanted to write this, and none of us, including myself, volunteered. So it's on all of us, I suppose. You just sort of went and did it. because someone had to do it, and none of us agreed or offered to do it. And I think, I don't know, at least 90 or 85% of this is good, usable stuff. And then it's a little bit different for me because before I was a stay-at-home mom, I was a teacher for 10 years. So sometimes when I read stuff, I think intuitively, oh, I know what they mean. And then I hear questions from people that are outside the industry, and I think, oh, that's right, it's not exactly as clear as, so sometimes maybe things need to be put a little more clear.
Which is why we need the eyes of readers like yourself to edit, to make it,
And there
as
is
Lorraine says, to make it.
There is
Truly
a
the committee's
huge
document.
need at the high school. I mean, from the tour we saw, and from all the stories that the teachers and the principal and you have told us, there is a need. And I think that if we just put a Band-Aid on it and we just get portable classrooms or something, it's not gonna fix the problem, it's just gonna delay fixing the problem. And maybe it's more economical right now, but in a couple of years, we're gonna have to fix it again, then I think other issues will come up. Are those students safe that are in the portable classrooms with all the school violence that's going on? Like, I think a lot of other peripheral questions will come up that we haven't thought of right now. So I guess I don't know the right answer. I don't agree that we should scrap the document. I think maybe put an extension and rework some of it.
Are you ready to sign off on this?
No.
I would say realistically, we need to push that schedule out a year because the SOI, although it just gets us in the pipeline, it's still, once you're in the pipeline, you can't really jump off the train, and I'm afraid that this train is going to be going too fast for
Right.
us.
Because we do
Yeah.
want a positive outcome.
So, yes, because we do want a good outcome, and I don't want to have to subject anybody to going through this twice, whatever it is. So I honestly don't think we'll be ready I don't think we're ready to commit to we're going to be ready in the next 2 years or whatever the time frame is with if we were to file the SOI now. I think we need to back off a year from that realistically. And then instead of sitting here and debating and stuff, I would like to go through these questions and decide what is and is not answered in this document as it stands now, and decide what needs to be added in the places where there isn't enough information or there is no information. And for the things that we don't know, figure out what we really need to, what kind of data we need to gather to answer the question, and not just sit here and debate this forever, because
I think you're making some great points.
because, I
And
mean,
there's no
for example, we sat here, one entire meeting was Perry going through all the gyrations to try to come up with a schedule and how many teachers are going through the halls with a cart and everything. And I think that is a great basis for a lot of our space needs in terms of, you know, you can say that our classrooms are 24 students per, you know, square footage wise, it works out that way, but every class is not going to have 24 students. And can you imagine the outrage if we start saying, okay, we're offering this many sections of whatever, and we will make it work so that every classroom will be full, and people will be infuriated that they couldn't pick the level or were shut out of other electives because we have the square footage as it stands now.
So, but Maureen, have you also been here when we've asked for a list of prioritized?
Yes, I agree that there's a lot missing.
And for me, don't ask me the day before a meeting to read an 18-page document and still not give me your list of priorities. I still don't know space. I mean, I can rattle off a few, but I don't live in that school. I don't have to work in that school. I don't have to be an effective educator in that school. So I don't know exactly what those priorities are, and I still don't have them. What I have is however many pages of prose that gives me a history of the school, and yes, some very important facts, but doesn't tell me what the problem is. So if I I have to agree with you, at least push it out a year, because we need that much time to be thoughtful and appropriate. But tell me what the priorities are for the 10th time.
I'd much rather see, rather than even say pushing out a year, go through the process and let the end result of the process dictate what your timing is, rather than artificially.
Well, okay,
But you gotta have something to work
I
towards.
think she's saying have a year of more
At least,
process.
you know,
at least a year,
Yeah.
decide where we are in a year
Right.
from now, and if we're ready to do it at that point. But, I mean, I don't want to say, let's extend it 5 years, because that makes, I don't know where we'll be in 5 years.
Unattainable.
Well,
Yeah.
the other aspect to that is, someone put it to me in a different context, is this is a volunteer endeavor, it's not a career. So, you know, there's going to have to be an end point to it at some point.
Well, and I'll just say from my standpoint, we're trying to problem solve the challenges every single day, and the
Right.
further that gets pushed out, whatever a solution is, if there is a solution,
Right.
the longer we're pushing out having to make compromises and figure out how to deal with these challenges.
And part of my reason for attending the committee too was to voice the need in the school that I see on a daily basis with teachers, classroom size, hallways packed with students, and how we're able to operate on a day-to-day basis. So when they wanted volunteers from a teacher perspective, I know there's a lot of people from outside of the high school right now, but I think the report is accurate in that they try to lay it out by department, that each department has their own special priorities, but most of them deal around, we're in a very crowded building. We have teachers on carts going across buildings, up and down floors, other end of the buildings. We have taken every inch of space in the building for offices, for storage. We've eliminated, you know, some of the things that we had in the past. School stores, academic support center. You know, many schools that we went on a visit have a career center. They have, you know, state-of-the-art computer labs. We have a very, very tight footprint. And I would be concerned personally that I appreciate the fact that your sense of, our sense of urgency from being in the building, I would concur with what Dr. Graham said, is that we're trying to figure out the schedule for next year and what classes we can offer and where we can put people. So from inside the high school, I feel this does reflect what's going on. You may need another set of data with numbers, with projected growth, or exactly what it is that you're looking for, but from the high school perspective, it is difficult working in the building in such a crowded space.
I could? Yeah. So I'd like to say that I agree with all the recommendations that Maureen has made, and I think you really summarized it very well just now when you said that, and I'm really addressing Heather's comments, but this document is a recapitulation of all the stories and anecdotes we've heard about issues in the school. As you put it, but it's organized by department, which is different than the way we heard it before. But having spent 11 months collecting that information, we still have no priorities, no recommendations, and no, not recommendations even in terms of what needs to be adapted, but no recommendations about how to solve those problems also. And so it's you know, to use your, it's a good narrative summary of the day-to-day struggles, but it's not a document suitable for handing off to a higher power called the school committee to say, this represents our best work and you should use it to act upon. And that's why I recommend that we just put it aside and start from defining our data or all that other fun stuff.
And just to clarify, though, this was not to be the end report, this was to be an interim report to the school committee. So I think that...
And I'm on the school committee. And I've been involved for 11 months. And this tells me the anecdotal information that was, you put it in the, and you said it's the same way. And I understand, and you have to understand, This whole issue is bothersome to us. It is bothersome to people in the town who've heard little bits and pieces and asked the questions. And we don't want you to be in the situation that you're in any more than you have to be. But if we don't do this the right way,
Right, the problem doesn't get solved.
we are jeopardizing where you work and where your students learn. And that's not okay. So one of my questions is, if this is an effort to examine the high school and the needs of the high school, is it inappropriate for Perry to be running the effort? I'm not putting you on the spot. It's kind of a question to the group.
I come back to saying there's a motion in front of the committee, and we need to deal with that before we go on to other issues.
Hold on.
So I just want to make sure, has everybody spoken? Did you want to say anything good?
I feel like I defer to the townspeople who have to stand up in front of in front of everybody in town. What do you need? I think everybody here wants us to have Neshoba be what it needs. I mean, you have everybody's listened for a year to what's gone on. And I want to give you what is best to explain to the crowd that is in the auditorium, and I have in my own town been in some very big decision things, and when you're out there with questions and your questions aren't answered, you vote no, even if you're for the issue, basically, but because you feel like you haven't been given all the information. This is beyond any scope of anything. I wouldn't even know what should it really look like, you know? So I just don't, if this goes forward once and gets turned down, it will be 10 years. Because a fire truck will come along, you know?
Right.
You know?
It's already on the agenda.
Yeah.
And things are expensive and they happen routinely and...
I think that this could be a useful appendix to the report that expresses the sentiments, at least of some of the members of this task force, that it describes the state of the nation in the school at present. It fails to give me a sense of what is the desired program, what's the program you're failing at because of how the school is structured the way it is now, and what is your ideal program. Those are very strong value judgments that talk about the entire operations of the school, but they have to fit into your building structure. And until I personally get a sense of where the school is headed and where it's failing at doing what it intends to do, I feel like it's very hard to evaluate the state of the nation in the school, which this report represents. You know, what is the direction you want to be headed in that's not being able to be met? But there are lots of aspects of it. You know, it's tight here. You have inadequate number of classrooms for elbow room to have diversity of schedule and flexibility in scheduling. But what is it you want to schedule? What is the program that you really want to have that you feel like you can't have because of the high school the way it is now?
Well, I feel like their biggest, what I've heard is their biggest thing is the STEM programs. They can't do the science in the labs because they're inadequate. There's safety reasons and building code reasons and things like that. And with the computers, am I speaking correctly or no? The computers, the kids that want to get into maybe computer engineering or graphic design or whatever is limited because of how the computer labs are. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, mostly STEM. I think you could probably do an English class anywhere. You could do it under a tree outside. But I think the kids, and the kids that are in the woodworking and the kids that are in the metal shop, and that's what I'm hearing. Is that right?
So if everybody's had a chance to talk, will we take a formal vote?
Yeah, we should do that.
So do you want to restate your motion so we're clear?
I move that this committee discard the current report and start a new data collection process to focus on the unique problems and opportunities of the Neshoba Regional High School.
We had a second. So all those in favor
Did I
of
repeat
Bob's
that
motion?
correctly?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I think that's what I originally said.
The gist of it's there.
Okay.
All those in favor of Bob's motion? All those not in favor of Bob's motion?
I have a question. How does this work? I mean, whoever shows up gets a vote? It doesn't matter who's at the table?
We've been
I mean, I
informed, but this
understand
is,
all.
this has generally been who's been showing up.
I think fits and starts.
Yeah.
So-
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Is this the first vote you've had?
yeah.
Yes.
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Is this the first vote you've had?
Formal vote, I think.
Yes, this is the
Yeah.
first vote, formal vote we've had.
Okay, I vote to start over. They didn't vote, I wasn't sure. So if you have a chair, so I guess you can vote too.
I would just like Ms. Stewart to tell me what the
Well,
vote
you know-
numbers end up being. So are people not on the committee voting? Are you not on the committee?
Well, I didn't know, it's my first time here, I don't know what the process is. So
So I can
apparently
have
if
eight to
you're here,
four?
you get to vote.
4 for, 8 against.
Well, if you're gonna count me then.
You were part of the 4.
Okay.
No, does he get to
No.
vote too? No? Well, he's here.
He's a minor,
I just want to
sorry.
make, oh, okay, well, sorry.
So Mr.
I was in
Richards,
abstain.
4 against the motion?
4 in favor of the motion, 8 against?
Or 7 against.
7 against, 1 abstain.
So 1 abstain, okay.
Okay.
And who abstained, just so I get it? Okay.
All right. So one of the original questions was, what are the next steps? Let's not use the word recommendations. What are the next steps? Right.
It respectfully suggest that whatever document we put before whatever group is here next, it be labeled at the top draft, draft 1, 2, 17, whatever it might
Draft
be.
5,
And-
yeah.
And have page numbers.
Yeah.
So if you want to go through and say, I love what you say on page 12, we're not all going, here's page 12. Minor housekeeping matter, but it will
Yeah.
facilitate discussion. And I didn't vote in support of the motion because as I said before, a lot of it contains, I was sympathetic to the idea, but I like what Maureen said about, let's make haste slowly. Let's go back through this. A lot of this would be either an appendix as a statement of fact, or included in ultimate report, whether it be an interim report or a final report to the school committee.
Are you making a motion?
No.
No. Because that's not necessarily going to happen, if that's what you want to have happen.
Well, I think,
The motion was to scrap it and start completely from scratch.
Yes, and he voted to keep it.
Right.
as a working document,
Yeah.
not to discuss.
Right. I think we all know that this is a draft.
And not to submit it,
That's it.
not to go to page 18, which is the last page, and say, submit it by this timetable. I'm
Right.
certainly not in favor of that.
Well, in order, my recommendation then is, in order to remove the most amount of controversy from this document, I would scrap section 6 right now.
Yeah.
Which page?
It's like the
Very
last
last
page.
The last page.
The one with the
So, I don't know how
timeline
this works, do you
recommendations.
have to vote on that?
I think we need to have some recommendations as an interim report. We've got to tell the school committee what we've been doing. So that may be just a one-pager to say, we've gotten this far, we have a very, whatever descriptor we want, but we're still looking for priorities, we're still trying to collect data, and that's that can be done in one paragraph. And we're going to continue to meet. That's the interim report to the school committee.
Oh, so we're done?
No. We gotta do the next steps.
Okay.
We need to start addressing all of the deficiencies of the current report as it stands.
Okay.
So I would want to have a cover page on this that tells me exactly what the committee wants, what the issues are, bullets of what the issues are.
An executive summary.
Exactly, an executive summary. And what the options are that you see without defining the end result.
The options are you using a different word for priorities?
Nope,
Okay.
I think they're two different things.
Right, they are two different things.
Right.
The
You
priorities
want the
are,
options before we state the priorities?
no,
Okay.
we still need to know, I want to pick this up and read, this is what the issue is. These are our issues. Here are our problems. And here is what we think may be options for us to move forward. But we don't have that. So again, what are the priorities? What are the issues?
Do you need-
STEM labs are the first priority. You know, I don't know, Jody, you're here, and I think you're wonderful, and you need it as much as you can get, but, you know, guidance needs its own system. Whatever those areas are. And again, not like we did with the last, however many months ago, when we looked at the spreadsheet that the MSBA gave us, and I really don't want to use the MSBA numbers, but we looked at that spreadsheet and said, okay, it says we need this, so let's plug it in. But that doesn't identify what we introspectively believe we need. That identifies what MSBA thinks we need. But that's not helping us prioritize. So I'd like to see that.
Well, one of the things, again, going back to deferring to Mr. Perry in his absence, rural Wi-Fi coverage can be fixed. Can it be fixed? As opposed to it can only be fixed if you have a completely renovated or a new building? Let's look at that problem. Can that be fixed? Short of going to MSBA, maybe there's even some capital issues that we could do locally to buy some time to get over this bonding hump that we're facing all the time.
But that's based on the priorities that we have, the urgent need, right?
Okay.
So it's urgent, then it's, you know, midterm 1 to 5 years, then it's 5 to 10 years. At least give us an understanding of the urgency and this type of need.
Well, I would like to, how to get there. I would like to take people, direct people's attention to the report, the overview on the first page, and I think it's the second sentence that starts, "This report will identify." And what that says is, "This report will identify the data we've collected that informs the public as to how well the current building's physical design aligns with our academic expectations and space limitations using state, and I assume it means state and national standards for square footage per student and standards for accreditation." I don't see how state standards, national standards for square footage should in any way, shape, form, or manner be setting our priorities for this school. What are we trying to achieve? Where are we not able to achieve that because of space? That should be how we set our priorities. Now, this list of questions was, it doesn't specifically say that, but I think if the questions get answered, you back into that kind of perspective. But I personally was shocked to see that sentence in there, because I don't think any recommendation should be based strictly on national or state standards for square footage.
Don't you think if we're trying to defend an argument, we need X, Y, and Z, people will say, well, who says? You know, you say you need this many classrooms, why couldn't you do it with this many classrooms? Like, what's the norm? What's a reasonable number of classrooms to need? I mean, to my mind, one of the benefits of having state or national guidelines is to say, this is what people generally recommend. And, you know, if I say, I think we need 6 more academic classrooms, well, why do you need 6 more academic classrooms? Can't you just stuff more kids into classrooms? Why is a 93% utilization rate a bad utilization rate? That sounds like you're making great use of your classrooms. To my mind, having some sort of standard to be able to turn to, while it's not necessarily, I don't know that we need to hang our coat on, we have to be what these people recommend, but at least it gives some context for making an argument that here's a deficiency. and here's why, here's a context for why we think that's a deficiency.
But it sets the whole document up as that statement, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. This sets the whole document up as this is how we're approaching this entire effort.
Right.
And that's, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would rather hear what you want to see happen. And then, oh, by the way, as a point of reference, the MSBA says this, or whatever.
But don't we get then caught in the trap of our narrative of what we would like? Which is one of the, I thought one of the concerns with the document.
Well,
I'm going to say, I would love to have.
So are you going to say that what you would like is a new STEM wing, and that you can't defend that? I can almost defend that now. So you're the one who's running that school, you know where your specific needs are. I will trust you if you come to me. If you come to us and say, this is our problem, this is what we need. I don't need Perry Graham to say, because MSBA says this. I will take your word that I need X number of classrooms because these are the types of classes I'm running, this is the number of students, and I don't have enough space for ABC.
And I've got to break your argument to two separate sections. The first section is, I need 6 more classrooms. Now, frankly, it doesn't matter how big or small the room is. If I need 6 more classrooms, if I've got 6 rooms available and they're all the size of the auditorium, then you've got 6 more classrooms, right? If you've got 6 closets, and that's a separate extreme. But what we don't have here is that you need 6 classrooms. That's what we want to go for. And why do you need 6 classrooms? And I think for purposes of, can you fit more kids in, I think the school committee has set a standard of a maximum of 25, which means you don't want to assume that you're going to be going for the maximum in every class.
Right.
Okay? But it's the 6 classrooms piece of information that we need. Now, when we get to the point of saying, what's it going to cost per square foot, then I think it's a fair discussion to say, well, current standards are. But in terms of how many classrooms and what do you need them for, I don't think square footage has anything to do with that.
I would agree with you on the square footage piece. Well, to a certain extent, when we talk about science labs, I would argue the square footage matters. But if I were trying to convince someone, we need, for example, we need 6 more classrooms. We need 6 more classrooms because of X, Y, and Z. If they walked in and said, well, hold on, all your classes that you're currently running, you're able to find classroom space for them. Why do you need 6 more classrooms? Then I can start to devolve into, well, look at how the scheduling process works, and you're going to have it starts to get very, very inside baseball. But I can say, well, I can tell you that right now we're running at 93% utilization in the building. Here are some of the ramifications of that. And the general recommendation is that a building run at about 80% classroom utilization because that gives you more flexibility to X, Y, and Z. That 80% comes from something.
Right.
So that's part of the argument that I'm making, I think.
And it's a logical argument, but you're projecting what you would say to the town meeting. We're asking, we're telling you what we need to know is the 6 classrooms.
Yep.
The square footage will come along.
Right.
And we will be the ones who challenge you as to whether or not you really need 6. You're not going to get challenged at that at a town meeting. We'll be taking those bullets.
Gotcha.
All right? And we'll be prepared.
Thank you.
Yes. No.
Well, so can we get the priorities?
That's why, yeah. That's why we
They'll
get
get
the
the
big
backups
bucks
and
here.
they leave.
But we'll be taking those bullets, and we'll be prepared to address that as part of a global picture. But as we sit here now, we're not anywhere near here. And to Lorraine's point, that opening paragraph sets up square footage as the criteria for all the decisions elsewhere, all the decisions and recommendations in this report.
So if I can translate in my words, let's say, what's the intended program?
Yes.
How are you failing on your intended program?
You've used the word fail a couple of times. There are very few places where we could point to we are
Right.
failing.
Challenge.
Which
Where
is
you're in
intended to be
jeopardy.
right.
You're-
But I had a situation in my family where it was a choice between an AP history course or a 5-point science course. And my son had to drop down a level in one of those because there was only one 5-point science course and only one history section. So one of the questions we have is, how often does that occur? How often do kids have to scale back their academic achievement, their academic goals, because we don't have the space?
Right, rooms have become a driving force in the schedule.
Right. That's the kind of information that we need to cultivate and develop and understand. Another example is the science labs. We've got 10 science labs of various sizes and qualities and components. Well, MSBA recommends, based on the spreadsheet we saw, that we have 10 science labs. So if the MSBA renovated the 10 science labs, wouldn't we still have a scheduling problem?
Or are we going to at least get 11?
Well, but see, that's the kind of critical follow-up thinking that I was discussing at the beginning of the meeting. Yeah, you give us the data, but just having the data isn't enough. You need to put it in context. And again, that's the kind of thing we need to go before our boards and to go before our towns and explain whatever recommendations we come up with. Personally, conversations among those of us who aren't in the administration, we're not terribly excited about working with MSBA. If this is something that can be done locally without MSBA changing the scale of the project, that'd be great. It may not be possible, but we're not.
And we'd all agree with that.
Yeah, we're not looking, we're not
Driving to that.
We're not driving to that.
But that's way down the line.
Yeah, that's a necessary evil if it gets to that point. So I'm just, what we need to do is understand what is it that the school, and you're going to the
New
England.
yeah, I printed out their standards today. It might be helpful to get the last report and share that with us.
The NEASC report, the stuff from the, I think it's Standard 7, which talks to the building, is incorporated into this.
It is?
Yep, so we took the sections from the NEASC report.
All right, well, if someone could show me what those are, that would be helpful.
There's,
Well, I probably
a lot of it's going to end up feeling narrative-y to you, I think.
Did they have any issues at the last go-round with the physical plant?
From 2003?
I don't believe so because we just finished the reno.
Okay. Okay. The current standards have no specific
They don't get
physical space standards, or they don't refer to any.
Our self-study says that we believe there are lots of deficiencies, and so
Okay.
the information from that is in
Okay,
here.
okay, so your current one is in there. All right, that I understand.
Right, the current one, not
Okay,
not the
all right.
previous one. But
but-
that's reflecting a lot of, there's factual information there, but it's also a lot of teacher opinion and survey data based on what teachers think.
Fair enough, but I think we're asking the last three questions. What is it that, with your current curriculum, what is it you're trying to do that you can't do? What opportunities would be available to students with your current curriculum that they can't take advantage of, like the example I gave with my son? And we're not even asking about population projections and stuff like that. And again, if it's appropriate, we can go through these questions and see if they make sense, but that's the intent of this group of questions that we put together 8 or 10 weeks ago.
Okay, well, going to your example of And we have had, over the years, we've had multiple cases of having to make those kinds of decisions of which class do you take because you've got one-offs that conflict. Would it be useful to have, you must have data someplace that tells you how many kids have to be called into guidance each year when you're doing the schedule and are faced with this choice, or the decision is made for them by the program because there's just no other way to do it. There must be some statistic that says, you know, at least, there were at least, 300 cases and this impacted 150 kids because kids typically had multiple occurrences of these kinds of conflicts.
So I've been building or helping to build the schedule, I think as long as I've been in the district. There are times certainly when teachers were the constraining resource.
Numbers of teachers.
Available teachers, like, there's only one AP German teacher, and.
Right.
I didn't.
In a budget limited sense, meaning?
No, I mean, we're building, so we have all the requests, and we build around the kids' requests,
Right.
but because Latin 1 needs to run here for freshmen, it means AP runs here, but because band runs here, AP Music runs here, so you can't do AP Music and AP German or something like that.
So it's not a space factor.
It's not, I used to build the schedule without rooms turned on, without regard to rooms. That was the last thing that we'd fill them in, Jeremy would fill them in over the summer.
So because rooms were not a constraining aspect of the scheduling, say 8 years ago or 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, we could build the schedule without regard to rooms.
Right.
Because we knew we could plug them in afterwards.
Right,
The
so when
only-
you mean teachers were constraining, it would be like, it happened that year, enough students wanted German 3 that you needed 2 German, that level of German teacher, and you didn't have it. That's an example of.
German 3 has to run where chemistry is not. Because the kids who want AP Chemistry and German 3 can't be in the same period, so it
populations.
forces it here. So there's
Right.
always,
It's the same year, yeah.
because the courses will build to maximize student enrollment, there's always some percentage
And
of
that just
kids who
happens
don't get
independent of
things.
space constraints.
Right.
And then in the scheduler, things like gyms, like a statistic isn't going to be valid because gym, they didn't get scheduled, but they just take a different gym and it still works out for them. The statistics won't grab the core academics or those very important electives that you guys are thinking about. But now when we build the schedule, rooms have to be turned on and they are a defining constraint so that I can't run a physics in C period if there's not a physics lab available because chemistry is using that because the configuration of labs, or there's been times when, we had too many classes B period, and you can't, it means that in English, which maybe ideally would run B period, there's not a classroom available because the rooms have become a constraint. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But you want data on that. That's going to be hard to quantify.
Take a stab. I mean, you don't have to do it right now.
Yeah, it's very hard to quantify because it all happens on the back end, and so you don't see it.
Right.
Meaning you spend weeks and months.
No, I mean it happens on the back end of the
Picking them off.
computer. I mean in the past you would
turn it
hand
off
schedule, but
and
if it
go.
happens within PowerSchool, so it's hard to see.
Perry, when you do the build, you get a percentage, correct, of how many match. Do you do that with the turn on of the space as the constraint?
Is it the awesome?
We don't do it both ways, so you can't compare without space with space.
Okay.
I mean, we could potentially do that, but we haven't done that, so I don't think we have historical data.
But I think, what I was trying to say is, I think
But
that
that's a question that, I think that's the kind of question you're asking.
a compelling argument for, I guess, for more space or whatever, is given the constraints of you can't, you only have so many classrooms each period, and so that impacts your schedule too, and how many kids want everything, and how things can't go together. So at the end of the day, you've got how many kids who asked for the 5-credit version of accelerated chemistry got stuck in a 4-credit
Right.
accelerated chemistry, which does impact their college applications to some extent if they're a math, science kind of kid.
Right.
So how many kids were forced out of what they selected because of these constraints? Or how many kids were the conflict of, do I take AP history or do I take honors chemistry? Because they're both running at the same time and I can't do both. And you must have a sense of how many kids, either the decision is made for them that, okay, you're going to take the 4-credit version of accelerated chemistry, or they get a notice from guidance that they need to make a decision because how can someone else make the decision?
It happens frequently.
Could we just look at, if you've got a copy of the questions, look at question A? Because I think that's our presentation of what Maureen was identifying. At your present population, without projecting changes, which current courses are you unable to fulfill demand for due to a lack of space? So, is it 5-point science? Is it rocks for jocks, or, whatever?
Yeah, there's sort of 2 prongs to that question. One is how many kids don't get what they requested, and
that's the general question right at the very top.
and the other question is, if space weren't such a constraint, what more could you offer that seems logical, that's not some esoteric thing? But, for example, like the AP sciences are 2 full periods instead of 1. So, if we had more space, would you be able to offer, AP astronomy as an alternative to AP physics for seniors or something?
So does that question A make sense?
Do you keep your bills?
Have you guys seen these questions?
No, I just handed them out.
No, have you seen this before?
At some point.
Yeah, we saw them, we handed them out here.
Okay. We handed them out in the meeting?
No, we didn't.
We did, I did.
Just today.
No, I mean
I didn't
before
adopt it.
today. Have you shared these?
Okay.
Well, you've only met the one time since then, which would have been the last meeting.
Yeah, we only met in October, we really,
No, we didn't.
September and October.
And then question B is a softball to the administration here, to the faculty. At your present population, what curriculum goals can't you achieve due to lack of space? What would you put in there that you can't?
For a 2-pronged thing, she was saying some of it is because of academics, because of whatever they're doing, and some of it is because of space. But my question over here was, she was doing actually okay up until a certain number of population got to the point where she had to actually lock in the rooms
Right.
and move the rooms around. So at what point did the population get to a point where, okay, boom, now we've got to do the rooms and now we're starting to squeeze?
Okay, because that would tell you.
Because that sounds like something we have to do. She said it was after Jeremy left, so it can't be more than 4 years ago.
Right.
Jeremy probably had to do it. Jeremy had to do it. Not Jeremy, Ralph had to do it.
Yeah, but did Ralph have to put the rooms on?
What was the position of these people?
It was principals.
She's got to say they were principals, so when they would do the schedule, so there's a physical point where
Right.
things got tight.
So the population
So
then was
population-
probably around 975,
No, we've been
950
over
people.
1,000 for a while.
I mean, we don't have 250 kids who aren't getting into core academic courses because of space. We don't have, 24 classes that we can't run because of space. So, I mean,
but for example, you had more kids sign up for business courses,
oh yeah.
right? You could have run, I believe, we said 5 more sections of business.
I mean, electives is where you're going to see higher numbers in terms of kids not able to take to stuff because of space constraints.
That's okay, that's fair, and that's why we ask what kinds of courses.
Yeah.
Because the electives aren't really electives because you've got a math or a art
Right.
requirement and this requirement and that requirement
Yep.
of distribution of non-core academics. So
it does matter, because if you're required to take a...
Oh, yeah, and I'm not trying to
course-
suggest it doesn't matter, just, it's within electives that you'll really see this. There aren't, hundreds of kids
That's
who are
okay.
getting the English
It's
class.
okay, they still need to see it.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so, question A is about what current courses are you unable to fulfill due to lack of space? Question B is what curriculum goals, now I think this ties into the assessment you're going through now. What curriculum goals can't be achieved due to lack of space? Sorry.
What you're asking is great, but I guess if I were Perry, I'd be a little confused as to what exactly is it that you want to see next time you see him. So,
In my ideal world, it would be English, sophomore English 101. I could support one more class and, German another class, or, in my ideal world like that.
so you want it listed by...
Subject.
Subject?
So as you're
Okay.
going through?
Course and section.
That's the way that's the way we understand that stuff. I don't know how,
What do you want me to
So
say?
what do you...
Well, I'm trying to figure out,
You're asking really hard questions. Remember, even when we try to look back and you say, do we have old builds? We have old builds, but we don't have what the kids didn't get or why they didn't get it, okay?
Because they didn't get it.
Right. Maybe they didn't get AP German because they got AP Music Theory.
So maybe,
And it's a very,
but I think we've agreed to push actions outside of this committee off for months at least.
yeah.
You can come back and say, I can't answer this right now, but I'll be able to answer that in September.
or I can give you this.
Okay.
So tell us what you get.
When we do the build this year.
Right,
So
I mean, the
for
other part
instance-
is, yeah,
For instance, we had 150 kids sign up for digital photography this year.
206.
I'm sorry, 206, and I'm known to exaggerate, so.
It might have been 204, but it's...
And we could only
It's
run
206.
3 sections of it, and that is a course that is definitely constrained by space.
Because they need to have computers to play
Yeah.
with their stuff.
Yes.
Right, we had
so 3 sections is how many kids?
60
75
kids.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
48 kids, because it was 16 in a section.
right, and we've pushed them up a
Because
little
we had
bit.
to put them in the...
Right,
Yeah, I
because
think it's-
they're using a dedicated music lab, and that,
Which is a glorified closet.
right, which is actually, so that's a program that is constrained strictly by space itself.
Yeah, we could definitely get stuff around a lot of the electives classes. I think we can.
Right.
But
So in
that's a
terms of-
perfect example of what we're looking
So in
for.
terms of your recent schedule you're currently operating, the decisions are recent enough so that you actually have access to requests.
We'll be going through that process in
Fulfillment of
3 or 4 months,
requests,
too.
and so you can really figure that out. It may be gone for previous years, because.
But as a baseline, if you could get what you can get from last spring's requests and
We've
the
got
summer's
current schedule in
schedule.
reality, and we'll be building next year's schedule in the next 3 or 4 months.
Could we
So-
take our current schedule and just simply go through and manually highlight the areas that are constraints? And then maybe we can see a trend like digital
Yeah,
photography,
it's
science, I know
It'll be
science
big
always
goals.
is.
yeah, it'll be more complicated than that, but yes, we can.
I don't know if we have a master course offering.
We do, yeah, we got a master schedule that says here are all the classes that are, but it'll,
Classes that ran and what the.
yeah, we can come up with something that, to that effect.
Just from what we know from starting from September to today, that, this class was offered, digital photography was offered, there was a lot of kids, a lot of them couldn't take it, highlight it. This is it.
I
And then we
think
can dig in a little deeper.
I think I can look at the requests, so what the kids wanted, and they don't over-request, they fill their schedule, and then we can look at the current enrollment, Perry.
And we just have to figure out what's space constraint, what's person constraint.
But
No, I don't.
that's gonna go hand in hand, and I think we can't, that gets,
Look, gotta be a little bit careful, because, I mean, digital photography, it's not like, I mean, there's also, we only have so many art teachers, and so then you're also making decisions around how many of this class you're gonna run. No, we did limit the number of digital photography classes specifically because of constraint reasons.
Right.
Because you can prioritize afterwards.
yeah.
Get the list down.
Oh, yeah.
We gotta
What
start.
I'm saying is I want to be careful that the data that we present accurately reflect space constraints and aren't conflating other things. I mean, you naturally only have, if you have 3 art teachers, you can only offer so many sections independent of any space constraints.
But if the school committee came back to us tomorrow and said, here, you can have 10 new teachers, we still couldn't run more digital photography
Correct.
classes because it's a space constraint.
Correct.
So I think that
Right.
these guys will know that, I mean, even if you, do you know what I mean? That
I
that's,
mean, yeah,
I just wanna be
it's
very
not, you're
careful
gonna
not
have to
to
tell us the stories
Yes.
behind all these decisions.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, but we can do that. We can figure out, we can't do X, Y, and Z because
I think I still have request data.
I've got all the request data for the last couple of years.
Is there a priority system, say like in college, the senior level people get access to the constrained classes because they need to graduate? Do you have a system like that for people when you have
There are all
too many
kinds of,
people for
there are all kinds of priorities that are built in on the back end for which courses schedule first. For example, band is the absolute first schedule that first class it schedules because it has freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in it, and there's only one period that it can run. So you have to get that scheduled first.
Yeah.
And then there are courses where we only allow juniors and seniors, and there are courses where we're going to prioritize certain grade levels. So yes.
So that is a method to squeeze down the number of people who can even choose a class because you know you've got a scheduling problem. And also it's a way to make sure that people at those class years can get in. Is that 2 aspects of?
Yeah, there are a variety of reasons. I mean, sometimes you limit courses because of prereqs or because you think that it's more advanced than,
Right.
a freshman might be able to do.
Right.
And then we're limiting enrollment because we don't have.
Right. We know we only have one classroom, so we're only going to let seniors in because we
Correct.
know we could have 4 times as many people in that class.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
The bill looks at iterations to maximize everybody's requests, and we can prioritize by classes,
Right.
but then we load seniors first, juniors, so
Right.
there is a load priority as well of who gets the classes first.
Right.
Okay, so, you think you can have this done?
December's a really tough month in
This is a crazy time for you.
So
And
if
it's
I,
okay if you don't have it done?
if I work on
But, I
it
mean,
in January and have it for the February meeting,
okay, so February meeting.
some version of what we've got, and then realistically, that would be helpful for us to know what we should try to look at going through the spring.
So are you taking this on your to-do list and I'm going to help you? That's what I
You're gonna be running the whole thing now, so.
I think you've got beat.
So I just want to make sure so you're gonna do the request versus the current classes that were run. And then you're gonna find out when you had to add the forms to build, so that we actually know at what point.
And there's a lot more stuff in there too.
But this is manageable though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll start with this one.
Yes.
No, but I mean, within doing that, there's like lots of other little factors that go into it. But yes, we will
We'll
figure
deal
it
with
out.
that later.
Yes.
Later.
Later, because we
No,
just
but I
did the
mean,
list.
in doing what you're saying right there, there's a lot more stuff that's in what you just said. But we will do
We'll
it.
pare it down.
Lynn, we will do it.
You get what I'm asking?
Yes.
So, to interrupt a little bit, so hypothetically she comes up with some answer and it turns out you've got for photography, you've got a demand that's much higher than your capability.
Yep.
If all those kids had actually been able to fulfill that class by being able to enter it, would that also, though, drop demand in other places because they actually used up one of their scheduling time periods? Are you able to even get any idea of that sort of thing, that stuff will drop because people get fulfilled where they want to go?
Right, and that is a little mushy, but you can look at the overall numbers, but we're not, kids are not, school committee wants everybody in 25 credits. I don't have everybody in 25 credits. There's not, periods are full, there's no place to go. 24, we're pushing. And in some cases, kids are in 2 gyms, you know, to get that extra credit. We're not the most popular people in this kind of, but if you had digital photographies, they'd be in them.
They'd be happy with that. All right.
Yes.
But there's so much going on, if we can just get to this point, I think
something.
we can, I
Yeah.
think we can kind of figure stuff out, but we
But
need.
what are
we
the
need a-
questions, once we're looking at that?
Right.
What questions do we have?
So at least we have something.
Yeah.
And
I
it
think
sounds,
the-
it sounds doable for us.
I think the agenda for this meeting said it was going to end at 8:30, so I don't know if we want to.
Well, I mean, we gave her work, what was somebody else gonna do? I mean, I hate to
I'm
think that she's
happy-
the only one doing work.
I'm happy to go on here. The
Please.
curriculum goals, are there things that
I'm sorry, Jim.
the faculty and administration want to do in the high school that we can't because of space?
That can come out of the self-study.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the self-study.
When would that
Well, it's already,
The self-study's done.
available?
and some of it was embedded in this document.
Yep, yeah, there is stuff in here as well.
But it's all there.
School self-evaluation process.
Could you then walk us through that at the December meeting?
Walk you through
Where it is in this
Where the
report.
curriculum.
what that stuff is.
Yeah, what the curriculum goals are that can't be achieved due to lack of space.
What curriculum?
You know, B,
Yeah, that,
can you walk us through that in December?
of what is currently in here, yes, but organizing that into like a bigger comprehensive answer, I can't have by December.
I would be happy with
Yeah,
identifying what is already in the report that's
Yeah.
from that, just because that, I think
Yeah.
that would be a good baseline for knowing what other information you need to get to flesh it out better.
I'm sorry, is it flesh out?
Flesh out the curriculum? The curriculum question, since a lot of the self-study information is embedded in this report now, if we can identify what things are already there, then we can identify what other information
And
we need, but
And I would say that there's some information in the self-study guide, but I know 4 years ago, there was a big push in the English department to have writing labs. I don't believe that's part of our self-study necessarily. I confess to having not read the whole self-study report,
I
but,
can't access it, so
Um,
you're better than I am.
you know, I would also say it probably makes sense.
Well, let's go over what we have in December, and at that point, see if there's more that we want to pursue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the self-study in a publishable state? Is it an internal document right now?
It's internal right now. After December 3rd, it'll be public.
Can I get it, can I pre-buy it on Amazon?
See me after the meeting.
Yeah, when we post, we can make it public.
And, you know, just as an aside, I'd like to, since Bill's here, I'd like to point out that for questions such as D, E, F, and H, we're going to need your help answering those. Absolutely. Because it asks what the build-out possibilities are. And I know you can't have any answers for December or January or maybe even February or something like that, but, you know, going down the road,
I can get some preliminary information.
yeah, we want to see
Be happy to report out
what
for us
extent
December.
the building can be modified.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can give an overview in December, and then maybe from that point, we can find out which ideas or areas kind of strike a chord with us, and then I could dive a little deeper down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
I do. I have a copy, I just don't have it in my
Oh, my God.
my book.
Introducing, it's like, no, you can get access.
And some of those physical plant questions are like, what must be done? You showed us a thing where all the insulation's wet and there's no R value. I mean, it seems like some of this is
Maintenance.
gonna have to be done regardless of where you go.
And we do that. I mean, we have a 5-year plan that, and part of what the committee decides is how aggressive do we I mean, are we going to
So I would
remodel
think
or?
that that would be part of your final report, your executive summary, saying without any substantial changes, there's,
I have that on my goals.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
How are you doing it? How are you doing on
That's a
that?
different question, we'll get to.
I'll catch up with you.
You can't do any of that stuff unless you know what the assets are.
So,
Maybe
I
you
don't know,
can.
I can. I think the purpose
But I'll talk to you after.
of the current report, we have some action items that we can report to the school committee that, you know, this is what we're doing going forward.
Yeah.
To put in an interim report.
Yeah, I'll draft that and bring that for December.
Sure.
It'll just say what we've done, bullets, essentially.
Yeah.
Met this number of times, this is what we've done, this is the data we've collected,
And
we're
we
still
have,
answering other questions.
we have some next steps outlined.
Yeah.
That would be-
So how are we moving forward? What are we doing to move forward?
Well, there's two parts to that. One is that, you know, we're going to put something together which we'll review in the December meeting,
This meeting,
the December meeting, yes, of
prior
this-
to going to the school committee.
Yes, which would be the interim report, but we have recommendations and action items going
Right.
into January and February.
So who,
And then in December, Carrie's going to talk to us about some of the curriculum goals, and Bill's going to give us an overview of some physical plant opportunities. And then in February, Jody's going to talk about some of the trade-offs, the magnitude of the trade-offs that students have had to make.
so that's a nice timeline.
Yes.
So can we get a timeline on whatever document? Who,
I'll do that.
how, all right, so how are we gonna move forward? Is Michael still gonna author all of this? And if Michael is gonna author all of this,
I was just gonna say, I didn't author this, I mean, we all authored this, so
I didn't,
no, I mean, administratively, I'll take that word, we were all partners on it.
well, is that how we wanna proceed? Because I'm not questioning, I'm just asking.
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
I'm saying,
Perceive how.
I have a question that might address your question,
Okay.
but mine's also a question. Is it possible, like in PTO, we do Google Docs and we sort of communicate in between meetings, so not everything happens once a month? Because it feels like nothing ever gets done if we only do
Right,
things once a month? Can we do something like a Google Doc here with our email addresses, and we can start off with the questions that Bob has typed up, and then if other people have questions, we can sort of,
It's hard to do that,
we can-
to meet the open meeting law requirements.
It's the open meeting law that's the problem. Technologically, we could do it.
You also have a closed
But-
site, which is a problem, but
But you could have subcommittees, and they could discuss stuff.
absolutely.
Working group.
I-
I'm sorry, working group, thank you.
Right, I
Working
think
groups.
that, I agree with Heather, but, you know, your questions are good ones, but who's to say they're exhaustive or they hit, I mean, are there other?
they're open questions for us.
Right, so as this kicks off other questions, where do they get added and lodged to make sure that they drive the final document that you need? And I can go on,
Let's-
sorry about that.
Let me offer, you know, I'll collect that stuff, okay?
What stuff? I'm sorry.
Additional questions or comments that people have. I mean, everybody can communicate to one person like me. It's just, we can't communicate outward as a group.
So everybody can send you
Yeah.
questions, we just can't have a
And
ongoing
I'll
discussion about it.
I'll maintain the list.
Are you gonna post them,
I can't and without
even if they're just questions?
You can
violating.
post them with the agenda.
Yeah, when the agenda goes out. But I
So
can't,
even if you had a question or asking for a clarification, that can't be public? So that you're not getting all the same question?
Well, I suppose you could email all the questions back out, like, once a week, as long as nobody responded to the questions.
Right.
You could do that.
Because sometimes when somebody asks a question, it's like, yeah, what about, you know, I mean, it triggers something.
Yeah, so if everybody sends questions that they have to Bob,
yeah,
on some timetable, you will send out, this is the current list of questions, so that you don't get bombarded with 10 different people asking
basically the same question.
You know what I can do, though? I think I could send that list. I think I can just send it to Alita, and she can send it out. And since it's not one member communicating to somebody else, I don't think there's any open meeting law violation.
We can post them to our webpage.
Okay.
Yeah, just send them to me. On the webpage.
So, yeah, I'll organize them and manage that, and we'll get them out to you somehow. At the very least, I'll ask Alita just to forward them to you.
Is that an extra step, though? Should we all send it to Bob to send to you, or should we all just send them to Alita, and she has a file somewhere?
No, I'll manage it.
Okay.
Because we'll probably want to group the questions together under different topics or stuff like that.
And that, yeah,
You know?
and that starts being, asking her to do.
It's good to have ownership.
Yeah. So. Okay?
Okay.
So the only action items are, you're gonna collect questions, Harry's gonna speak, Bill's gonna speak, and,
I'm going to do a brief interim report.
okay, and this poor lady has work. So, and that's it? Yeah.
That will do. That will do.
And we have to review the NEAS report to make sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And we can post that once it goes in the packet,
Okay.
so that you
Good.
have that. Okay?
Yeah, I'll set.
Thank you for your honesty, thank you for dealing with process. Public work is not always easy, but it can be fun.